comes your weekly dose of brain food. Here are 50 amazing facts to blow your mind. Better Call Saul was nominated for 53 primetime Emmys without winning a single one. Apple Watch sales in 2020 amounted to approximately $30.6 billion compared to the whole Swiss watch market exports of approximately $16 billion. In 2018, engineers with the New Jersey Department of Transportation had to reverse engineer a steel bridge for a rehabilitation project. They did this because the files with the original plans were destroyed in the collapse of the World Trade Center on 9/11. Avril Lavigne recorded the chorus for Girlfriend in several different languages to appeal to foreign markets. It was recorded in Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, German, Japanese, and Mandarin, as well as a version in Hindi that was ultimately scrapped. India has a vast and rich dinosaur fossil bed that remains unexplored. Hundreds of fossilized dinosaur nests have been found in India, and exploration of them could expand our understanding of them. Unfortunately, the country does not have a facility that can do the deep cleaning the fossils require. In 2006, the movie Blazing Saddles, the 1974 American satirical comedy western, was found to be culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant by the Library of Congress. It has since been preserved in the National Film Registry. In the 1890s, the US government created the Alaska Reindeer Service in an attempt to persuade Alaskan natives to become reindeer herders. Reindeer were imported from Siberia, and Sami herders were brought from Norway to teach the Alaskan natives. The photo of Salvador Dali jumping and painting while water and live cats fly through the air took 5 hours and 26 tries because they couldn't get the timing right. The floating objects hung from wires were held up off camera. Dali's canvas frame was empty in the pic. He painted it in later. Clovers used to be part of every lawn as it was cheap and easy to maintain. After World War II, pesticide companies declared it as a weed, and up until recently, it's been removed from lawns. The black hole Ton 618 is so big at 66 billion solar masses, a new term had to be invented to describe it: the ultramassive black hole. In the 1790s, an Oxford student introduced using guano or bird poop as fertilizer. He spread guano across the university lawn using it to spell guano. The lawn was soon scrubbed, but when springtime came, the word guano was clearly visible, growing higher and thicker than the rest of the grass. A guy called Dale Schroeder used his life savings to send 33 students to college. He grew up poor in Iowa, never married, and had no children, and worked as a carpenter at the same company for 67 years and only owned 2 jeans. GM recalled 800,000 cars in 2014 due to faulty ignitions. The cars would shut off while being driven, which means that drivers lost power steering and brakes, and the airbags wouldn't deploy. They knew about the problem since 2005 but never fixed it because it would be too expensive. 124 people died because of that decision. When Winston Churchill sold Chartwell, the family home, to the National Trust, he required that there always be a marmalade cat named Jock in comfortable residence there. The trust honored that request, and the current resident is Jock the 7th, a 6-month-old rescue kitten. I love marmalade cats. Meow meow. Where my baby's at? I know I love you. Dad's just working right now, okay? I snuggle you shortly. A researcher once played a recording of an elephant who had died. The sound was coming from a speaker hidden in a thicket. A family that heard it went wild calling, looking all around. The dead elephant's daughter called for days afterwards. The researchers that played it never did such a thing again. Researchers taught African gray parrots to buy food using tokens. They were paired up, and one parrot was given 10 tokens and the other none. Without any incentive for sharing, parrots with tokens started giving some to their broke partners so that everyone could eat. Broke is a joke, I help. A homeless man once found a $10,000 check on the street meant for a real estate broker and found a way to return it. The broker was so touched that he awarded him a place to live and arranged for a job interview. A year later, he was on the board of directors of one of their foundations. Volvo opened up the patent for their 3-point seatbelt because it had more value as a free life-saving tool than something to profit from. Elvis Presley's manager sold I Hate Elvis badges as a way to make money from people who weren't buying Elvis merchandise. When pimps get arrested, their cash can legally be confiscated, but not their jewelry. This is why pimps wear a lot of jewelry so that they can repawn it for bail money. True story. Mike Judge moved to Texas and a storm blew off part of his fence. After his new neighbors fixed it for him, no questions asked, it became the basis for King of the Hill. The show is about neighbors who ultimately do the right thing and do right by people and are basically good people. Astronomer Johannes Kepler built the legal defense for his mother when she was accused of witchcraft. The 6-year trial resulted in her freedom. Film composer John Williams is the most Oscar-nominated living person, with 54 nominations. He's also the first person to be nominated in 7 consecutive decades. The moon appearing huge when it's near the horizon is a trick of our brains that they play on us. You can actually remove the illusion by bending over and looking through your legs or standing on your head, and nobody is quite sure why. 90% of traded goods are transported via ocean shipping. Edward Bernays, nephew of Sigmund Freud, was the father of public relations. He opened the tobacco market to women, branding cigarettes as feminist torches of freedom. He died in 1995 at the age of 103. China has a theme park, the Kingdom of the Little People, that's run by dwarves. Established in 2009, the plan was to create a secure workplace for people with dwarfism, often marginalized in China's superstitious society. From 1928 to 2016, no Republican won the presidency without Richard Nixon or a Bush on the ticket. Garibaldi was an Italian general who led 1,000 volunteers in the unification of Italy, outnumbered 90-1 and commanding just a few stolen tugboats. He managed to land in Sicily, incite the people there to revolt, and ultimately destroyed the state of 2 Sicilies in less than 2 years. As of October 2022, Norway spends $127,671 per inmate per year, which is more than the United States average of $25,000. The movie Paranormal Activity had a total budget of $215,000. It went on to earn $193 million globally at the box office. Russia and Pluto have almost the same area. Pluto has 17.7 million square kilometers, while Russia has 17.3 million square kilometers. That's a small planet, or a big country. When Nicolas Cage proposed to Patricia Arquette, she told him to get odd objects to prove his affection. These were J.D. Salinger's autograph, a Bob's Big Boy statue, a black orchid, and a Hill Tribe wedding outfit. Despite the list being intended to be impossible, he found them. The scientific name for brain freeze is sphenopalatine ganglioneuralgia. In India, zero-currency notes are paid in protest by angry citizens to government functionaries who solicit bribes in return for services which are supposed to be free. In 2007, a non-profit organization created the zero-currency note, and thousands of notes are distributed every month. The first mention in Western medical literature of magic mushrooms was from 1799, when a man picked mushrooms off London's Green Park for breakfast. After stewing them for his children, his son had fits of immoderate laughter and his daughter got vertigo. A Massachusetts grocery store offered free shuttle service to customers to bring them to and from the store after it had less than 10 shopping carts left. The goal was to prevent losing any more carts from customers who were bringing their groceries home in the carts and not returning them. Gut bacteria talk to our brain and influence our mood, energy level, appetite, memory, and personality. You basically have a second brain in your stomach. New York City is owed over $1 billion in unpaid parking tickets and speeding fines. For a brief period of time in 2021, Hasbro, the toy company, owned Death Row Records. During one filming session of the 2004 movie Passion of the Christ, assistant director Jan Michelini was struck twice by lightning, and minutes later, Jim Caviezel, the actor who played Jesus, was also struck. Both survived. The toy company Mattel once made a vibrating Harry Potter broomstick, a toy that was intended for kids to be able to pretend to fly around on, but they were forced to discontinue the toy after adult stores in Times Square started selling them for twice their original price. During the Vietnam War, the US conducted what they called Operation Popeye, in which they stimulated clouds in Vietnam to extend the monsoon season. It was later declassified in 1974, and the United States' involvement in this operation became public knowledge. €0 banknotes exist. They have no monetary value, but instead are used as souvenirs. They're intended to promote tourism, and each one has a unique design relating to European landmarks or events. James Cole of the University of Brighton found that human meat is a lot lot less nutritious than pork or wild game, and that the average human body has about 75 pounds of edible meat. I really don't want to know how he figured that out. Out of the 400 to 500 species of sharks, the sand tiger shark is the only one known to fart. The Guinness World Record for the most children delivered at a single birth to survive is 9 babies, known as nonuplets, and belongs to a woman in the African country of Mali. Sharks don't make sounds. Across all their species, none of them have any organs capable of producing sound. There's a term called vasovagal syncope, which refers to a sudden loss or near loss of consciousness caused by an emotional or environmental trigger, such as the sight of blood or needles. So if you've ever fainted while getting blood work done or just don't like needles, that's what that was. NASA discovered that only 40 digits of pi are needed to accurately calculate the observable universe's circumference within one hydrogen atom. Jack White of the White Stripes originally wanted to save the guitar riff used in Seven Nation Army for if he ever got the chance to make a James Bond theme song. Now that didn't happen, obviously. However, interestingly, he did in fact get his wish 5 years after the song was released, when he wrote the theme song for the 2008 Bond film Quantum of Solace. Roosters have built-in ear protection to prevent them from going deaf from their own crowing. Up until 2018, there were still some McDonald's in the United States, specifically in Florida, who still sold fried apple pies. Now they're all baked, in case you didn't get the comparison, as if that was at all healthier. On December 2nd, 1942, scientists at the University of Chicago produced the first controlled nuclear chain reaction in human history. James Earl Jones and Carrie Fisher, who was the voice of Darth Vader and the actress who played Princess Leia respectively, never met until they made cameo appearances in an episode of The Big Bang Theory in Season 7, Episode 14, 37 years later. There are at least 5 species of shark living in the River Thames in London, and at least one of those species is venomous. After President Kennedy's assassination in 1963, the owner of the Texas School Book Depository building had the infamous sniper's window physically removed and placed on mounted display in his own home. When axolotls lose a limb, they can regrow the missing body part within a few weeks. In this way, they can regenerate almost anything, including limbs, spinal cord, heart, and even parts of its own brain. It can even remain in its larval form throughout its entire life. NBA player JaVale McGee and his mother, former WNBA player Pamela McGee, are the only mother-son duo in history to win Olympic gold medals. The US state of South Dakota installs fatal accident markers at sites of fatal automobile crashes to help prevent future crashes. They're durable signs that say think or why die, and also act as memorials for the deceased. Prior to humans settling there, New Zealand had no land-based mammals apart from 3 bat species. Through the lens of modern data analytics, a simple voice recording can yield thousands of speech parameters that can reveal a user's biometric identity, body shape, personality traits, mental and physical health, emotions, drug habits, geographical origin, and socioeconomic status. The diabolical ironclad beetle has one of the strongest exoskeletons of any insect, allowing it to withstand forces of up to 39,000 times its body weight. Chaser was a famous border collie who lived between 2004 and 2019 in Spartanburg, South Carolina. The dog's tested memory was the highest of any non-human animal. She could identify and retrieve over 1,022 different toys based on name and category. Filmmaker James Cameron has visited the Titanic 33 times, including once when he was trapped for 16 hours due to onboard technical issues. As of 2017, the US Navy has started using Xbox 360 controllers to operate the periscopes on submarines based on feedback from junior officers and sailors. Previous controls for the periscope were clunky and really heavy, and not only that, but they cost $38,000 compared to an Xbox 360 controller, which costs around $20. The line "There's one for you, 19 for me" in the Beatles song Taxman was not an exaggeration. At the time, the highest UK tax rate was 95%. Lucille Ball convinced Merv Griffin to hire Alex Trebek to host the revival of Jeopardy in 1984 when the original host, Art Fleming, a friend of Trebek's, declined to return. Trebek holds the Guinness World Record for most episodes of a game show hosted, hosting the show until his death in 2020. Chinese checkers is actually called Sternhalma and is not related to Chinese culture or the game of checkers, and was actually invented in Germany in 1892. In 1997, a mentally unstable man in Canada cut down a rare golden spruce tree, sacred to the indigenous people of the area, in order to protest the logging industry. His trial was on the island in British Columbia where he cut down the tree, but fearing for his safety, he opted to kayak there solo rather than taking a plane. He hasn't been seen since. The Titanic was the place of discovery for tiny iron-eating microbes. These microbes form icicle-shaped rusticles which consist of 35% iron compounds and a community of symbiotic microbes and fungi. This bacterium, known as Halomonas titanicae, is expected to dissolve the Titanic by 2045. Gabe Newell, president of the video game company Valve, which created Steam, owns Inkfish, an ocean exploration research organization which currently holds the records for the deepest crewed dives in all 5 oceans. They did this with their deep submergence vehicle called the Limiting Factor. The real city. Many people are not sure if Scranton, Pennsylvania is a real city. The US version of The Office leads more than 400 British per month and 110 Americans per month to Google, is Scranton a real place? Sunny Philadelphia. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is the wordiest show on television, with 176.2 words per minute, which makes the Rob McElhenney created FX sitcom the hardest show to follow if you're watching with subtitles. The Lego Airplane. In 1961, Lego created its own airport and airline just to fly its employees around the world. Today, the airport is Denmark's second biggest, and it's roughly the size of Anchorage Airport in Alaska. Just enough room. There's an island in New York called Just Enough Room where there's just enough room for a tree and a house. The decline in Christmas Island. After noticing a decline in the Christmas Island pipistrelle, a type of bat, permission was given to the Australian government to capture and breed wild specimens. In August 2009, scientists found only one instance of the bat through echolocation after 4 weeks. It later went silent that same month. The valuable guitar. Kurt Cobain's guitar, a 1959 Martin acoustic used during the MTV Unplugged performance, sold at auction in 2020 for $6 million. This makes it not only the most valuable guitar, but also the most valuable piece of rock music memorabilia of all time. The spelling of Linkin Park. Linkin Park originally wanted to be called Linkin Park with a C, but ultimately changed their name so that they could register linkinpark.com with a K. The donated tree. Rockefeller Center tree is donated to Habitat for Humanity every year since 2007 to help build a home. Colorblind whales. Whales are colorblind and see the world only through black and white. This includes the knowledge whale. The spring equinox. The earliest source that stated December 25th as Christmas Day was based on the assumption that the conception of Jesus Christ took place at the spring equinox, or March 25th, so that his birth had to take place 9 months after, on December 25th. The Animal Planet series. The Animal Planet reality series River Monsters ended because star Jeremy Wade was able to catch essentially every exceptionally large freshwater species on Earth, leaving no remaining content for the show. The Obsessed Fan. Robert Pattinson dealt with an obsessed fan who had been camping outside his apartment by taking her out on a dinner date. He said, "I just complained about everything in my life and she never came back." Millennial dads. Millennial dads are spending 3 times as much time with their kids as their fathers spent with them. Back in 1982, 43% of fathers admitted that they'd never changed a diaper. Today, that number is down to about 3%. The money generating show. The cast of Friends each made $1 million per episode in the final 2 seasons and now makes $20 million per year per cast member for reruns. The show still generates $1 billion a year year for Warner Brothers, all thanks to David Schwimmer's encouraging the cast to negotiate as a team. The price of a hot dog. Costco's hot dog has remained $1.50 since it was first introduced in 1984. After the company president complained that they were losing money on it, CEO Jim Sinegal put his foot down and said, "If you raise the price of the effing hot dog, I will kill you."
Murder over a hot dog.
The lucky ticket. A waitress was tipped a lottery ticket and won $10 million. She was then sued by her colleagues for their share. Then she was sued by the man who tipped her the ticket. Then she was kidnapped by her ex-husband and shot him in the chest. Then she went to court against the IRS. Good Lord. The eradication of smallpox. Dr. Donald Hopkins helped eradicate smallpox and is on the verge of killing another disease right now. He's taken guinea worm disease down from 3.5 million cases a year to just 28 cases last year. Dogs' burials. Romans were known to create tombs for their dogs and gave them epitaphs to remember them by. One such inscription read, "I am in tears while carrying you to your last resting place, as much as I rejoiced when bringing you home with my own hands 15 years ago." Friday productivity. Microsoft tried a 4-day work week in Japan as part of a work-life choice challenge by shutting down offices every Friday. Productivity measured by sales per employee increased by almost 40% compared to the same period the previous year. King Charles makes $34 million in rent annually. E was used for grading up until the 1930s, but then they stopped because US schools feared students would misinterpret E for meaning excellent, which it definitely didn't. It meant you kind of dumb. HBO canceled the Game of Thrones spin-off Blood Moon in 2019 after spending $30 million on the pilot. HBO's content chief explained that it was a hard project because George R.R. Martin had only written about 8 lines of text for the era that the show was set in, so a lot more invention was required. Jerry Zucker, the director of Ghost from 1990, didn't want Patrick Swayze or Whoopi Goldberg to audition, saying, "Over my dead body will Patrick Swayze ever play this role?" But Patrick did end up securing the part and helped change Jerry's mind on Whoopi Goldberg, the role that she would win an Academy Award for. Japanese death row inmates are executed by hanging. 3 prison officers simultaneously press buttons to open the trap door, so it's not clear which one is responsible. There's a 2009 Folgers television commercial called Coming Home, which was given an unofficial title such as Folgers Incest Ad because many viewers perceived that the main characters, which were brother and sister, were engaged in a relationship. The ad inspired multiple works of fan fiction, and in fact, there's actually a parody extended cut on YouTube that's really funny. You can actually look it up right now. After this video though, people around the world are ingesting as much as 5 grams or a credit card's worth of microplastics every week through drinking water. Peter Farrelly, one of the Farrelly brothers, made movie 43, a Razzie winner for Worst Director and Worst Picture. 5 years later, he won Best Picture and Best Screenplay for Green Book. See, never give up. Yeah. Stainless steel is not stain free, but stains less than other alloys. There was a mascot for the Japanese nuclear industry called Plutokun, a humanized plutonium, who taught children drinking plutonium isn't dangerous. Yeah. The blue raspberry flavor is actually just an artificial raspberry flavoring. The widespread practice of coloring it blue is attributed to the Icy brand, which wanted its signature flavors, including red cherry, to match its logo. In 2021, a new species of fish was identified that has the smallest adult brain of all known vertebrates. It's also the loudest of all known fish relative to its size. Birds masturbate. That's it, that's the fact. The platypus was initially believed to be a hoax by European scientists who discovered it. The platypus is a unique mammal that lays eggs, has a duck-like bill, a beaver-like tail, and otter-like feet. However, indigenous Aboriginal people were already aware of the creature's existence. After Hurricane Katrina, the number of babies named Katrina dropped sharply. After 10 years, the name Katrina was 83% less common. A 2,000-year-old sapphire ring believed to have been owned by the Roman Emperor Caligula sold for over 500,000 pounds in 2019. The sky blue ring also has an etching on it that's thought to depict Caligula's 4th and last wife, Caesonia. In the late 80s, US ranchers were paying a fortune to become ostrich farmers. But South Africa noticed the US ostrich boom and in 1993 started supplying ostriches for the US market. This increase in supply led to lower ostrich prices, causing US farmers to lose tons of money. 17 to 20 people on the waiting list for an organ transplant die every day in the United States, and only slightly more than half of the 100,000 plus people on that list are expected to receive an organ within 5 years. The Chicago Cubs 2016 World Series rings includes an engraving of the infamous Billy Goat that was refused entry during the 1945 World Series, causing the owner to lay a curse on the team. Australia's Naughtiest Home Videos was taken off the air in the middle of the first broadcast when the owner of the network discovered the show and ordered "Get that off the air." A Land Rover commercial was banned by the Advertising Standards Authority because it had sounds of beeping parking sensors as a Land Rover backs up closer to the edge of a cliff. 2 viewers had submitted complaints because the SUV's rear parking sensors were not capable of detecting cliff edges. In 1974, the passage of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act allowed women to open bank accounts, apply for credit, and commit to a mortgage without needing a male co-signer. The 2022 DC superhero Batgirl was the most expensive abandoned movie in history. Warner Brothers already spent over $90 million finishing it, and the film was in post-production when they decided not to release it. The most expensive medication in the world is Hemgenics. The cost is $3,500,000 for a single treatment. It's used to treat hemophilia B, a genetic bleeding disorder. There was once a crocodile that reached 39 feet in length. Sarcophagus, nicknamed Super Croc, had a jaw so powerful that it could crush bone, which the animal used to hunt dinosaurs and other prey much larger than itself. It weighed 8 tons, equal to 2 adult elephants, but went extinct with the dinosaurs. In 1985, Japan Airlines Flight 123 crashed and over 500 people didn't make it. The plane's AFT pressure bulkhead was damaged 7 years prior, but was not repaired correctly. When it failed, the crew lost all control of the plane and only 4 people survived. In the 1840s, people would say prunes instead of cheese when getting a picture taken. It's a conspiracy by the dairy farmers. Walt Disney's house on Carlwood Drive in LA was sold in 1998 and demolished. The original gates still remain though, which contains a hidden Mickey design. When the Emperor of Japan announced the surrender at the end of World War II, he did it in extremely formal and archaic words, the equivalent of an English speaker using Shakespearean language. Research suggests that working irregular work shifts for a decade ages the brain an extra 6.5 years. Despite selling 500,000 copies in its first 2 hours and going 7 times platinum, Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 albums were considered to have underperformed sales expectations. Hair will sometimes grow back differently after chemotherapy. People who have straight hair may find that they now have curly hair or vice versa, and it can even grow back a different color. As of 1859, documented in the Baseball Player's Pocket Companion, there were different rules for baseball, with the New York rules ultimately winning out over the Massachusetts rules. The US TV show Dallas is alleged to have helped partially hasten the downfall of communist Romania. The regime allowed airings of the show in the 1980s, believing that the show could be seen as anti-capitalistic. This backfired though, as citizens desired the luxurious lifestyle that was portrayed in the show. The last broadcast was a found footage horror movie predating the Blair Witch Project, which was estimated to have been made for $1,000 or less and made $4 million at the box office. The F-104 Starfighter jet had such an abysmal safety record, it was called the Widowmaker in West Germany. 292 of 916 units were lost to accidents there. Other countries reported similar rates. The Canadian preschool show Whimsy's House got sued by the Jim Henson Company for copyright and trademark infringement. At one point, the sales of vodka accounted for 1/3 of the Russian national national budget. Children in ancient China learned to write from 1,000-character text, a 1,000-word poem where the characters do not repeat and cover everything from philosophy to astrology. After Salvador Dali expressed support for Spanish dictator Franco's regime, Pablo Picasso refused to mention Dali's name or acknowledge his existence for the rest of his life. Human skeletons today are much lighter and more fragile than those of our ancient ancestors. Research suggests that this is a result of modern human sedentary lifestyle. Get off the couch, you bum! Castoreum is secreted by beavers to mark their territory and to waterproof their fur. When it squirts out, the noise can be heard by someone standing nearby. The FDA considers castoreum a natural flavor since it comes from a natural source, and it can be used as a food additive. The novel Dune was rejected by at least 20 publishers before being finally published by Chilton, the auto manual company. The normal human heart beats about 100,000 times per day and sends over 2,000 gallons of blood throughout the body daily. The mother of Lee Harvey Oswald would sometimes go to the Dealey Plaza and sell her autograph for $5. Bernard Hill, who played Theoden in Lord of the Rings and Captain Smith in Titanic, is the only actor to appear in more than one film, winning 11 Academy Awards. Alexander Graham Bell believed people should say ahoy when they pick up the phone, whereas Edison proposed hello, putting the word into common usage. The US has not elected a below average height president for 120 years. Only 3 presidents since 1776 were not above average height. The Columbia Torch Lady is a co-worker of the painter hired for Columbia's new logo. The impromptu photo shoot was conducted in her living room, and this session marked her first and only time modeling. Sleeping on your side increases facial wrinkles that are perpendicular to expression-based wrinkles. Miriam Nabadzani Babirie has birthed 51 children. As of April 2023, her eldest child is 31 years old, and her youngest is 6 years old. She's a single mother who was abandoned by her husband in 2015. Julius Caesar was once kidnapped by pirates, and he demanded that they increase his ransom. After his release, he captured and crucified them, fulfilling his promise made during captivity. In 2001, Major League Baseball successfully voted to eliminate 2 of their teams, the Twins and Expos. But the plan fell through after the Twins were legally obligated to honor their stadium lease, and the Expos were purchased by MLB and moved to Washington, D.C. Earth's magnetic poles reverse polarity every 2 million years, so that north becomes south and south becomes north. In 1977, East Germany and Vietnam entered into an agreement. In exchange for technical assistance and expertise in the project, Vietnam would plant coffee and provide East Germany with half the crop. But by the time that the trees were mature enough for harvest, East Germany had collapsed. No coffee for you! Po was the only bilingual Teletubby. She was voiced by Pui Fan Lee and occasionally spoke Cantonese on the show. It's illegal to give out free tobacco products in the United Kingdom unless you're a member of Parliament, and it's within Westminster Palace, as royal palaces are exempt from legislation. The doorway effect is where the simple act of walking through a doorway, both physical and virtual, can cause us to forget what we were just doing. Studies show at restaurants that don't print dollar signs next to their prices on menus, customers will actually spend more. Josh Pio, a 19-year-old, got 6 years in prison for making threats on the MMO game RuneScape. Cornelius Vanderbilt, the American business magnate who built his wealth in railroads and shipping, had an estimated worth of $105 million at the time of his death in 1877, which is just over $3.1 billion in today's money adjusted for inflation. Prince had a huge stash of unreleased records and fully complete videos. Danish Special Forces operative Helga Mayer transported vital humanitarian aid to civilians for years during the Bosnian War in an armored 1979 Camaro with Kevlar plates. He earned the nickname God's Rambo for extreme bravery without a weapon. Some women may have beards due to polycystic ovary syndrome, an endocrine disorder that sometimes causes women to grow excess hair. Marcus Persson, the billionaire creator of Minecraft, never finished high school. Infamous Manson family follower Leslie Van Houten was paroled in July of 2023 after 53 years in prison. Patricia Krenwinkel and Tex Watson are still trying to get parole. When Emma Stone registered for the Screen Actors Guild, her real name, Emily Stone, was already taken, so she decided on the name Emma in honor of Emma Bunton, aka Baby Spice of the Spice Girls. Shane Stant, the man who attacked figure skater Nancy Kerrigan, asked to have his assault record expunged so that he could join the Navy Navy SEALs. He was 34 when he asked, which was too old to be a SEAL anyway. Approximately 98% of all mammals do not menstruate. These estrus species reabsorb endometrial tissue at the end of the infertile cycle. Grain engulfment is a real hazard for farmers working with grain silos, with around 20 deaths a year attributed to it, many of which involve children helping their family work the farm. Literally, it's people getting swallowed up by grains. The largest known object in the universe is the Hercules Cornea Borealis Great Wall, and it's 10 billion light years across. During making of the first Hitman game, developers of Danish video game company IO Interactive kept Agent 47 bald because it was too difficult for them to do hair on the main character back then. The current water speed record for the fastest speed achieved by a waterborne vehicle was achieved 46 years ago at over 511 kilometers per hour, or over 317 miles per hour, and it's considered one of the sporting world's most hazardous competitions. Harrison Ford and Sylvester Stallone are the only two actors in history to have starred in box office #1 films across 6 consecutive decades. The plane crash in Breaking Bad mirrors the real-life 1986 Cerritos mid-air collision, and the junior air traffic controller involved was actually named Walter White. In 2022, James Earl Jones officially retired from voicing Darth Vader, but signed permission for Lucasfilm to use archive recordings and AI to continue using his voice for the character. DreamWorks owns the film rights to Martin Luther King Jr.'s quotes. To lessen the immediate financial burden of Terminator 2 Judgment Day's production costs, Carol Co. Pictures paid most of Arnold Schwarzenegger's salary with a financed $12.75 million Gulfstream 3 jet. Pop artist Andy Warhol was a devout Catholic who attended Mass every Sunday, regularly volunteered at soup kitchens, and converted at least one person. Lensei Namioka, born in China, has a name that cannot be written in any Chinese language. Her linguist father found 2 Chinese syllables, Len and Sei, that aren't used in words, so don't have Chinese characters. She's the only known person with that name. Buzz Aldrin from the Apollo 11 mission was nicknamed Dr. Rendezvous by other NASA astronauts. Aldrin, with an MIT PhD, knew that it was not a compliment. New York mobster Joe Gallo was a diagnosed schizophrenic, watercolor painter, and avid reader of classic literature who paraded his pet lion around the city. He kidnapped his own bosses, sparked 2 gang wars, and was killed on his birthday in 1972. Even Bob Dylan wrote a song about him. The Beiju are a group of people in Southeast Asia who evolved to have spleens 50% larger than normal. This allows them to spend 8 hours a day underwater catching octopus by hand. Samsung can remotely disable your TV that comes preloaded with a television block function. When the TV connects to the internet, it checks its serial code against a list on Samsung servers and stops functionality if there's a match. It's used to mitigate cargo theft and unauthorized retail. Traditional red velvet cake gets its signature red color and velvety texture from a chemical reaction occurring between unprocessed cocoa powder, acidic buttermilk, and basic baking soda. Kevin Costner turned down starring in Air Force One in 1997 so he could star in The Postman in 1997, a movie he also directed. Air Force One was a critical and commercial success, while The Postman was a box office bomb, with Costner winning 2 Razzie Awards for Worst Actor and Director. A baseball stadium organ player was ejected from the game after playing 3 blind mice in response to what he thought was a bad call by the umpire. In the list of the top 20 highest grossing musical tours of all time, only U2 appears 3 times, grossing $736 million in 2009, $390 million in 2017, and $389 million in 2005. Taylor Swift is #1 on the list, with the only tour to ever gross $1 billion. The United States once voted on a treaty that would have annexed the Dominican Republic, with the eventual goal of making it a state. The slogan for Kazakhstan's tourism board is, and this is true, "Very nice." I like this, very nice. You come to Kazakhstan, baby, you're going to love it. The last soldier of the British Empire to die in World War I was the Canadian George Lawrence Price, who died 2 minutes before the end of the war. Until 2019, male members of the United States Marine Corps were not allowed to use umbrellas while in uniform. The first vending machine was in Egypt and dispensed holy water, not Coca-Cola. You know what they say about holy water? It's just regular water until you boil the hell out of it. I'll move on. There's a Chinese poem entitled She, with 92 words, all of which are she. The poem becomes comprehensible because Chinese is a tonal language, where the same word can be pronounced with many different tones. Supposedly, the poem is more sensible in Cantonese than Mandarin. When walking into a bar in England, Jimi Hendrix and his band were told that they weren't welcome by a bartender who said, "Sorry mates, we can't serve your sort in here." Hendrix thought it was because he was black, but it was actually because they were mistaken for circus clowns. Word pairings like artsy fartsy, super duper, and itsy bitsy are a linguistic phenomenon known as rhyming reduplication. Face shape can correspond to body stature, i.e., taller people tend to have longer faces. When Weird Al was developing the Weird Al Show, Seth MacFarlane pitched him an animated segment, which Al didn't go with. That segment was later developed into Family Guy. Michael Bay worked for Lucasfilm as a teen. When he filed the storyboards for Raiders of the Lost Ark, he thought that they would be terrible. His opinion changed when he saw the final product, and it set him on the path to become a filmmaker. Since the year 2000, 5 new elements have been added to the periodic table. The 7th row of the periodic table has finally been filled. Vending machines are more deadly than sharks due to falling on people. The Texas Triangle, composed of Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin metro areas, holds 68% of the state's 30.3 million residents. Animals lacking teeth to grind their food, such as birds and fish, have a specialized stomach containing rocks to replace that function. There's no federal statute that says a private business, person, or organization must accept currency or coins. There's a form of Greek sculpture called the Herma that consists of a head, an uncarved block, and jiggly bits. I can't show you the actual picture because the YouTube gods will demonetize this video, but you can Google it. It's just art, people! Ha! Black people with blonde hair occur naturally in the islands of Melanesia. In Japan, there's a group of prominent female housewife stock traders known as Miss Watanabe, who are so proficient at what they do that many traders look at them for reference on which stocks are doing well. In 1986, while being filmed for the Bangles music video Walk Like an Egyptian, Susanna Hoffs moved her eyes from side to side to look at certain members in the crowd to counter stage fright. She had no idea that there was a close-up being done at that moment, and it would become the focal point and iconic moment in the video. During the witch trials, spectral evidence, which is evidence based on visions, was considered a form of legal evidence, and if accepted, was virtually impossible for lawyers to refute. However, people at the time were unable to agree whether the devil can take the form of an innocent person or not. King Cobra is not a cobra. It's actually the sole species of its genus and just happens to look a lot like a cobra. During World War II, something occurred called the Yellow River Break, where China destroyed their own dams and levees in a tragic attempt to create defensive water blockades. This intentional effort to thwart enemy advances led to the drowning deaths and loss otherwise of 400,000 to 500,000 Chinese civilian lives. Former Washington Commanders owner Dan Snyder owned Six Flags, and he ended up sending it into bankruptcy. Before whistles were introduced, hockey referees used a cowbell. They had to switch to whistles when fans started bringing their own cowbells to disrupt gameplay. A man in the Middle Ages wrote a book claiming that witches were stealing men's members, putting them in a nest, feeding them oats, and keeping them as pets. He was in part responsible for starting the European witch trials. In 1862, John Langdon Down was the first to describe a distinct mental disability, calling it Mongolism due to his perception that children with it shared facial similarities. Now understood to be Down syndrome, it was discovered in the 1950s to be caused by the presence of a third copy of chromosome 21. Keanu Reeves has a group of fungicidal compounds named after him. This is because scientists who isolated the compound group described their deadliness towards mold as being comparable to the deadliness of Reeves' movie roles. An aluminum-based Airstream was the only travel trailer in America to survive the Great Depression. While cleaning up the World Trade Centers in the early 2000s, crews found a shipwreck 7 feet below the foundation that dated all the way back to 1773. Exploding head syndrome causes patients to hear a loud loud, frightening noise when falling asleep or waking up. Up to 10% of people may have it, but cases often go undiagnosed. When the Apollo astronauts were out of radio contact with the ground, they actually had a tape recorder inside their spacecraft that recorded their private, unguarded conversations. These transcripts were classified until the 1970s because they included detailed information about Apollo operations. Despite not having played since 2018, MLB player Andrew Toles has remained under contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers so that he can continue receiving mental health treatment for his schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. More than 1,600 people are recorded to have died from falling off the Great Pyramids of Giza in the last 200 years. The vehicles in Disneyland's Indiana Jones ride cannot reverse. The final boulder escape scene is achieved by tilting the vehicle's motion base backwards and accelerating the walls past the riders. Squirrels' terminal velocity is so low that they can fall from any height and actually survive. Saint Clare of Assisi, who died in the year 1253, is the patron saint of television. This is because when she was too ill to attend mass, she had reportedly been able to see and hear it on the wall of her room. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who you probably know best as Elaine from Seinfeld, is the actress with the most primetime Emmy Awards and Screen Actors Guild Awards. Treadmills were originally used as punishment devices for people sentenced to forced labor in British prisons. It was banned as cruel and inhumane by 1900. So if you hate your cardio machine, you're not alone. In 1991, the Bryan Adams song Everything I Do, which has reached #1 worldwide, was declared not to be sufficiently Canadian enough by the regulatory body CRTC, denying it more frequent airplay in Canada. This despite Adams being made a member of the Order of Canada in 1990. Well, that's our country for you. Spelling bees, the competitions where competitors must correctly spell words until one is left standing, doesn't really exist outside of English and is almost exclusively an American thing. Yeah, that's true. I don't remember ever having a spelling bee in Canada. That's weird. John Rock, one of the creators of the contraceptive pill, was a devout Catholic. Of the approximately 16 million Americans who served during World War II, there are around 119,550 still remaining. Linguists estimate that at least half of the world's 6,500 languages will become extinct in the next 100 years. That means on average, a language is dying about every 2 weeks. Genghis Khan's conquest caused such devastation that vegetation regrowth in his enemy's former lands led to a notable decrease in atmospheric carbon dioxide. The creator of Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan, had planned to kill off Jesse or Hank in the first season as a ballsy moment to end the first season on, but a screenwriter's strike limited the production from 9 to 7 episodes, and the death was eliminated with the limited episode count. The film Jaws caused neurosis in a viewer. After trouble sleeping and anxiety, she began screaming, "Sharks! Sharks!" with convulsions. A study found that Jaws is unusually effective among films in causing stress. Whether it's suspense, gore, or music the cause is unclear. Norway has the largest single sovereign wealth fund in the entire world at 1.6 trillion in assets, larger than the sovereign wealth funds of China, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Steven Spielberg desperately wanted to release Schindler's List in 1993 in time for the Warsaw Ghetto anniversary, but Universal wanted him to finish Jurassic Park first. To keep Universal happy, he had George Lucas oversee Jurassic's post-production while he's filming Schindler's List in Poland. If you step on a scale at the North Pole and you weigh 200 pounds, you would weigh 198 pounds in northern Brazil at the equator due to the spin of the Earth. I know. Want to come say hi to everybody? My boy! Hi, healthy boy. I know, I love you, Ned. Quick dance for everybody, and then we go. Okay, ready? Baby Ned, do. Okay, I love you. Healthy boy. Thumbs up for Ned. Islam spread to North Africa because a general decided to ignore his orders. The caliph sent a letter ordering his general not to invade Egypt. Suspecting it contained orders to withdraw, he said that he would open it at the end of the day, by which time he had already crossed the border. In Iceland, you're able to revoke your ex's rights to your surname. Bill Nye the Science Guy holds a patent for improved point shoes to better support dancers' feet. Bill! A pregnant woman can get pregnant again again while she's already pregnant. It's possible for a human female to be carrying a baby and release another egg that can be fertilized independently, resulting in 2 differently aged fetuses in her womb. A man survived 2 separate bear attacks in a single day. After the first attack, where he was bitten on the head and arms, he played dead to make the bear lose interest. Despite the ordeal, he walked 3 miles to his truck only to be attacked again by the same bear and miraculously survived. And that's when you buy a lottery ticket. A version of the golden rule can be found on ancient Egyptian papyrus from the Egyptian late period. It states, "That which you hate to be done to you, do not do to another." There's an annual lying contest in England called the World's Biggest Liar. Held in Cumbria, contestants vie to tell the most convincing lie within 5 minutes. Politicians and lawyers are barred from participating due to their reputed skill in deception. There are over 20,000 species of edible plants in the world, but only 20 make up 90% of humans' food. If you have a fear of bridges, you can hire a service where someone gets behind the wheel of your car and drives you across the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, a 4.3-mile stretch in Maryland known as one of the scariest bridges in the world. In the early 1950s, many elementary students in Lake County, Indiana and Utah were tattooed with their blood type in case nuclear war broke out. From 2014 to 2019, Flint, Michigan was exposed to contaminated water, leaving 12,000 children exposed. This led to 79 lawsuits, 12 deaths, 4 firings, 4 resignations, and 1 conviction in which the convicted was given just 1 year probation. 4% of people have never had a headache. While dogs may not pass the traditional mirror test, they do pass a smell mirror test, suggesting that they understand the concept of self. Cockroach dust plays a part in why so many inner city children have asthma. Inspector Clouseau, the world's only known pink manta ray, was first discovered in 2015 in the waters off of Australia and named for the detective in the Pink Panther series. When New Coke was released, Pepsi gave their employees a day off and ran full-page newspaper ads to declare the victory in the Cola Wars. Theaters used to hire people to attend shows to clap, cry, or laugh at the right moments in order to influence the audience's reactions. Matt Damon, via his ventures Water.org and Water Equity, raised $150 million in 1 month alone from Starbucks, Gap, DuPont, and other big-name companies. The initiative aims to continue providing access to safe water and sanitation in some parts of Asia and Africa. Leonard Nimoy refused to join Star Trek the Animated Series without George Takei or Nichelle Nichols, claiming that they were proof of ethnic diversity in the 23rd century. Sid Vicious got his name after a friend's hamster named Sid who bit him. Vicious hamster. Due to Woody Harrelson's raw vegan lifestyle, the Twinkies in the movie Zombieland, in which he plays a character with an affinity for the treat, were replaced with vegan faux Twinkies made from cornmeal. Vern Troyer, the actor who plays Mini-Me in the Austin Powers movies, has to do all of his own stunts because at 81 centimeters tall, there's no stunt double his size that can fill in for him. In 2006, a rare grizzly and polar bear hybrid species was confirmed in Canada called pizzly bears or growler bears. Global warming is causing polar bears' habitats to melt, so they find shelter elsewhere and end up mating with grizzlies. In 2004, a serial rapist in India named Aku Yadav was lynched by a mob of 200 of his alleged victims after they did not get justice in court. They stabbed him over 70 times, threw rocks and chili powder at his face, and even hacked off his, well, man bits with a vegetable knife. After the ordeal, all of the women involved claimed responsibility for the murder. Well, that's a feel-good fact. In 2005, the Golden State Fence Company in Southern California was hired to build part of the fence that separates the US and Mexico. However, ironically, just 1 year later in 2006, they were fined $5 million after it was discovered that they had hired illegal immigrant workers to build part of the fence. In 1993, a Chinese man named Hu Song-win was diagnosed with kidney failure. In 1999, after no longer being able to afford the hospital bills, he built his own dialysis machine, which kept him alive for another 13 years. Since then, a new medical insurance scheme was introduced in China, which now covers his treatments. When he was a freshman in 1987, a man named Mike Hayes got a friend who works at the Chicago Tribune to write him an article asking the millions who read it to donate 1 penny each towards his tuition. Immediately, pennies, nickels, and even larger donations came pouring in from all over the world. After accumulating the equivalent of 2.9 million pennies, he graduated and paid for his degree in food science. After being eliminated from the show Hell's Kitchen, contestants are immediately taken to get psychiatric evaluations and then to a house where they are pampered with back rubs, haircuts, and manicures. This is because the experience on the show is so draining that the producers don't want the eliminated contestants to kill themselves or someone else. In 2012, after spending 5 days in prison, a Korean man named Choi Gat-bok, who had practiced yoga for 23 years, escaped by slipping through a tiny food slot at the bottom of his cell door while the guards were sleeping. He was only 163 centimeters tall, and the slot was only 15 by 45 centimeters. Phumipol Adunadate, the current king of Thailand, was actually born in Cambridge, Massachusetts in the United States in 1927. When he was born, the hospital room that he was delivered in was briefly declared Thai territory so that he could be technically born on Thai soil. There is a hidden beach in the Marietta Islands in Mexico. It was originally formed in the 1900s by the Mexican government and used as a bomb site for preparation for the First World War. Today, the only way to get to this beach is by going through a small opening in a cavernous wall or being hoisted down by helicopter. Switzerland has enough nuclear shelters to accommodate 114% of its population. In fact, it's actually a legal requirement for the Swiss to have a protected place that can be reached quickly from their place of residence. A study conducted by Loma Linda University in 2010 concluded that laughter not only reduces stress, but increases the production of antibodies and kills the activity of tumor cells. So as it turns out, laughter really is the best medicine. There are more tigers held in captivity in the United States at 5,000 than there are running wild in the rest of the world at only 3,200. There's a chimpanzee in a Russian zoo named Zora that became addicted to booze and smoking after too many visitors began giving him alcoholic treats and cigarettes. In fact, in 2010, the chimp actually had to be sent to rehab to be treated for his addictions. Today, I'm happy to say he has happily recovered. Don't be giving booze and smokes to chimps. What the hell's wrong with you? Keanu Reeves runs a private charitable foundation to fund cancer research in children's hospitals. In 2009, he told Ladies Home Journal, "I don't like to attach my name to it. I just let the foundation do what it does." GoldenEye 007's multiplayer mode was so last minute that neither Rare nor Nintendo management knew about it. The first time executives saw anything was when the programmers were playing it. DreamWorks used to punish their animators who failed at their work on Prince of Egypt by sending them to work on Shrek. Apparently, the punishment even had a nickname, to be Shreked. The speed camera lottery in Stockholm, Sweden is unique. Drive at or under the speed limit and you'll be entered into a lottery where the prize fund comes from the fines that speeders pay. Because of this, average speed reduced from 32 kilometers an hour to 25 kilometers an hour, a reduction of 22%. Since domestication, dogs' eyes have changed. Dogs now have eye muscles that make them more expressive and infant-like. These same muscles are absent in wolves, their closest relative. Okay, follow me on this one. Lake Superior has an island, which has a lake, which has an island, which has a pond, which has a boulder, which, when the pond floods, becomes the largest island in the largest lake on the largest island in the largest lake on the largest island in the largest lake in the world. Just rewind that, listen to it back, it'll make sense. A silent man in the UK repeatedly gets arrested for standing on certain roads to block traffic. He never speaks a word, not even to the court or his own lawyer. Every time he's released, he repeats the crime and remains completely silent. Ancient Babylonians did math in base 60 instead of base 10. That's why we have 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. Frank Zappa was a futurist who was enthusiastic for the possibility of holographic imagery. So much so that he recorded footage of himself in the early 70s with the intention to be used when technology got to that point. A Frank Zappa holographic tour using the footage was created from it. A US law firm set up honeypots on torrent sharing sites like the Pirate Bay and then sued people who downloaded their torrents. The matter reached the FBI and the pirate site accepted to collaborate with the feds, resulting in the crooked lawyers getting jail time. ADHD doesn't always mean short attention span. Hyper-focusing on attention task for hours on end is also a known symptom of ADHD, where the inability to stop is considered to be the problem. A quiet American POW was nicknamed the incredibly stupid one by his Vietnamese captors. Upon returning to the United States, he provided the names of over 200 prisoners of war, which he had memorized to the tune of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. Jim Carrey used to get to do stand-up in his 7th grade class. He used humor to fit in, and his teacher made a deal with him. If he was quiet all day, he would get 15 minutes at the end of class where he got to do stand-up using material from Life, the class, or doing impressions of faculty members. Paper cuts are so painful because at the microscopic level, paper is actually quite rough. A knife makes a straight cut, but paper acts as a saw blade and does more damage to cells and nerve endings. Paper also leaves behind tiny fibers and chemical residues, irritating the wound even more. The CIA revealed a heart attack gun in 1975. It's a battery-operated gun which fires a dart of frozen water in shellfish toxin. Once inside the body, it would melt, leaving only a red mark on the victim where it entered. The official cause of death would always just be a heart attack. 8 years after JFK's assassination, Jackie Kennedy avoided the public unveiling of their White House portraits, but the Nixons graciously agreed to a secret private tour for her and her kids. It was her only return visit. After firefighters saved piglets from a barn fire, 6 months later, the farmer sent the sausages made from the piglets as a thank you gift. That is twisted and delicious. In 1967, Paul McCartney forgot his passport when traveling to France to shoot a music video. He told the agents, "You know who I am, so why do you need to see a photograph of me in a passport?" And he was let through. According to a study, strict parents can turn their kids into more effective liars because children who are afraid to tell the truth learn more deceptive behaviors to avoid getting in trouble. An annual supply of bottled water for a person who consumes 8 glasses a day would cost approximately $200. The same amount of tap water would cost approximately only 33 cents. The reason that the Michelin Man is white is because rubber tires are naturally white. It wasn't until 1912 that companies started mixing carbon chemicals with the rubber to make black tires. This process is not an aesthetic change, but a structural one, making the tires stronger and more durable.